Answers of an Alien from Andromeda, Video 154, March, 2018. Friends, a lot of things being realigned in this solar system right now. The teams do not stop supporting these jobs and we have had little free time for the friends. Your planet is currently undergoing a natural restabilization since it no longer has any artificial apparatus keeping the stabilization under control. Of course, as I have warned you before, you will undergo more intense climate changes as the geomagnetic field comes down from these changes in the planet's internal mass circulation. The time of plant diversification, as I mentioned a long time ago, is beginning. Many regions will not lend themselves to what they once provided, and others will be impossible to reuse within these contexts. You have already noticed that things are politically stagnant, because the leaders have been warned that the important thing now is not the disputes, but the fight for the survival of their ethnicities. Even though they have been warned at a number of meetings that have taken place near Antarctica, do not expect much help from governments that still follow booklets of large-scale elimination of populations and ethnicities considered by them to be dispensable. A major race is going on for installations on Mars. The population of humans in the colonies has nearly doubled in recent months. I will keep you informed of any drastic change that is about to occur. Mithy, I know you mentioned it years ago, but could you give a more direct explanation of the mechanics of the controversial Big Bang? Friends, I could say it was not an explosion like your pseudo-scientists believe. As in the old records, when a third-dimensional universe reaches a previously planned level of expansion, a passage of matter and energy is created within the boundaries of the virtual boundary predefined for that universe. According to information from advanced races like the Krulines and beyond, this is the third-dimensional universe created from an initial mega-universe. This initial mega-universe would have a mass equivalent to 500 universes like the one in which we live, and the idea of subdividing growth came from entities of the fourth dimension responsible for these subjects. A very simplistic idea can be imagined with your soap bubbles. A bubble creates a second small bubble on its surface, and in the case of the universes, a passage of energy and matter is created that will begin to fill that second bubble. What you call Big Bang is simply the moment of the opening of this passage that will, over time, equalize the pressure determined for the whole. In a macro view, imagine this large soap bubble with 3 other adjacent bubbles receiving matter at these intersections so that one day they will reach the equalizer and continue to grow together as equals. It is not known with certainty if this subdivision will stop or if new secondary bubbles will be created on the surface of the Great Bubble, but according to the records the formation of these 3 were sequential, with differences of approximately 1 billion years each, and this ended more than 10 billion years ago. Therefore, apparently, only these 3 were determined to be created around this specific big bubble. Mithy, what is buried in the silence zone in Chihuahua, Mexico? Thank you. Baru, there are points on the surface of the planet where there are secondary points of support of the gravitational tunnels that tie the planet Earth to the system. At these points, the magnetosphere gives rise to secondary tunnels that literally bend the magnetic lines forming these associated tunnels to the main tunnel and maintains the stability of the connection. These points deactivate frequency signals in electronic devices, such as large magnetic field openings such as the anomaly of the South Atlantic, which deactivates satellites and even shuts off the Hubble telescope when it passes over the region. Mithy, if animals belong to a collective conscience, is it just a conscience for all animals or it is split by category, like birds, mammals, reptile, etc.? Is there a hypothesis of an animal conscience became individual, evolved to leave the collective conscience? Munas, as I have explained earlier, each race of beings that do not have individual consciousness has its collective soul. The soul contains all the characteristics of behavior so that this particular race can survive within the parameters offered by the available environment. As an example, the soul of insects contains the characteristics common to this type of development and thousands of subsouls attached to it with the specific characteristics of each insect ethnicity that inhabit that planet or environment. This example works equally well for reptiles, birds and mammals. As for the autonomous development of consciousness, this does not really exist since it only happens when there is a direct intervention with specific reprogramming in its DNAs. This does not depend on time or nature, it requires proper scientific intervention and for that purpose. Dear Mithy, over the years you have mentioned a number of factors of the humanoid psyche, such as ego, survival instinct, fear, conscience, mind, spirit, balance, maturity, DNA, soul, consciousness, knowledge, frequency and conscientization. Of all these, conscientization seems to be a central unifying theme. Could you give us, with an eye to conscientization, a comprehensive model of the level 0 humanoid psyche moving toward level 1, and how these factors interact with each other? Perhaps with some tips how to avoid the many pitfalls on this journey? Michael Norton, conscientization is the point that you can attain the more conscious you become with yourself. The humanoid psyche varies greatly from race to race, making it impossible to create a primer that can serve all of them. The more aware you become of how important a small part is you can do to a set of small parts, the closer you will be to consciousness, and this will lead you to understand the interdependence of everything around you, and there you will be ever closer to conscientization. The escalation from level 0 to level 1 will necessarily happen to everyone, only that one will more quickly reach the state of conscientization, and will become the mentors of the less favored to the understanding. Be aware that those who are looking for information and knowledge, find much more quickly what they are looking for. The tuning of your common sense will make you see deviations more clearly, and this will lead you to commit less and less unnecessary deviations in your journey. Mithy, is Oumuamua a spaceship in red color resembling one which is found on the far side of the moon? If not, what is its nature please? Kit, this little transport ship associated with the Etonians and their colonies in the Pleiades is deactivated just like the spacecraft that is deactivated on your moon. By the time the great and ancient disputes that enveloped your solar system generated scraps like these. The scrap loaded with minerals, for having a very long orbit after being abandoned in space, has passed several times to gain momentum in the system and only this time has been tracked by you. Mithy, are any of the 16 colonies that you, your crew and the CG are helping their planets to pass to level 1 accelerating quicker than anticipated, and have any of the colonies experienced full disclosure? How are they in accepting the idea of extraterrestrials? Tammy, these colonies are a bit different in terms of cultures and races. Of the 16, none of them have more than 2 ethnicities on the planet, with an average of over 80% miscegenation, so they have had a much quieter development than you were having here. 4 of them have had direct contact, and are getting on very well with the new neighborhood. The CG does not interfere with local customs, but rather provides resources so that they can become more equitable for everyone in the new colony. Mithy, can you offer another number for the current percentage of Earthlings ready to adopt level 1 or the transitional level 0+? Peter, let's say incarnated and disembodied at the moment about 36% is above levels 0.6 to 0.9. Mithy, Earth will grow 5% expansion, how much percentage the Earth has gone so far? Julian, the planet with this current increase in progress will reach about 115% increase in the original size, since it began to cool its surface. That is, more than doubled its diameter. Mithy, what happens to the magnetic lines of the planet when a spaceship is in our atmosphere? Do they become distorted the same way that big submarines make? Carlos, of course depending on the size of a mothership they make every effort not to get close enough to cause interference, but small ships up to one the size of Australia can travel through the atmosphere that will not cause significant interference in the magnetic field. Mithy, Canon claims that the deep state is being exposed. Here is a published map explaining the elite relationships to include ETs. Is this an accurate mapping of our history, and if so, are the elites finally acknowledging CG existence to the public? Does Canon have any truth or merit? Jerry, this map is a merely indicative summary of what most well-informed people already know, so be aware when they begin to decline on what the public wants to see, because most of the time most of this information only appears because someone wants them to appear. Your elites are suffering attacks and defeats in these times, but this is mostly the result of infiltrated elements working to liberate this colony for their first open contact. The fight against the ancient domination of your elites is being held 90% behind the scenes and 10% is what appears visible. You see, the person you mention can have its merits with real contacts in this process so he can detail and anticipate events, but if this were the case, the possibilities of continuing this informational work would have suffered reprisals with ease since the operational control of your network communications still belongs to your elites. When things come easy, stay alert, take what you believe and keep the rest in a sandbox. Dear Mithy, recently there has been a spike in ambient radiation levels in parts of Tokyo. These levels are higher than during the fallout event of March 2011. Currently Shibuya, Tokyo is registering over 0.34 microsieverts per hour. Why the sudden localized spike in readings? Are the high number of deaths related to radiation exposure or are they just the result of an aging population? Thank you Mithy, from the bottom of my heart. Gilbert, Japan has many water beds in its basement and in reality is almost totally loose, trapped by specific areas that keep it cohesive so far. The greater radioactivity eventually penetrated the deeper water sheets with a sinking syndrome with one of the incandescent atomic nuclei. Much of Japan is highly radioactive in its deepest layers and this tries to reach the surface with increasing intensity. Not good news. Mithy, I would like to know what the mysterious lights over Russia the other night were. Was it the Pleiadians protecting Russia from asteroids or something else? What occurred to light up the sky there for miles? Wizorred, when an asteroid or meteor of threatening size can fall into a densely inhabited area, Pleiadians probes automatically destroy them. If it falls into the sea or in a desert area they let it pass. But when it comes to an asteroid like the 2017 EC-15 made up of gold, you would probably disagree if the Pleiadians stopped him from hitting the surface. Mithy, in meeting 151 you talk about the pilot colony in Mars approved by the Manchik board. This cosmopolitan place you talk in our solar system also includes the colony of reptilians and earthlings that is already there? Can you please elaborate a little bit on this? How they get along? Thank you. Carlos, as I said earlier, Mars is now a cosmopolitan planet in your solar system. Our colony is already very well set up and green. The reptilian colony which receives the Terran Associates is also an approved colony for the place and already has more than 40,000 inhabitants. All supervised by Taos agents who will be responsible for the development of the solar system. Any modification of fauna and flora has to be approved previously by the colonies that are using the planet, with the consent of Taos. Mithy, you stated that one of your saddest moments was witnessing the destruction of a planet. Could you explain to us why this was allowed to happen in the first place? Was the population of that planet, besides suffering from poor leadership, in serious spiritual arrears? Andrew, that was early in my career. An insectoid colony took over a more advanced transport ship during a commodity trading, and scientifically tried to copy the spacecraft, since they operated with much older units. They took the ship to a laboratory in the basement of the planet and dismounted. At that time, their scientists believed they had found a way to open the antimatter energy unit to copy the technology into a controlled laboratory, and as the government authorized the attempted appropriation of technology they went forward. When they opened the unit the reaction was out of control and formed a black hole that consumed the planet quickly. We were in orbit at the time trying to negotiate the ship's return when our automated systems pulled us away at a safe distance from the event that started out of control. I personally saw the extinction of more than 5 billion beings during the minutes that lasted the event. This population, after being disincarnated, was redistributed to planets with its race and was gradually reabsorbed in the third dimension, but the perpetrators of this Holocaust will suffer many incarnations until they pay the enormous debt that they contracted. Mithy, once meeting 37, you talked about the size of planets, and quoted one that is 100 times bigger than our Sun. Just for curiosity, where is this planet? Which star does it orbit? Or it's the star that orbits it? Which colonies live there, if there's some? Snowmaw, the larger a star is, the more mass it can accumulate orbiting it. Great gravitational fields attract and capture much more matter, which ends up aggregating and forming huge planets. Suns, as you name them, as Betelgeuse and Antares, with 700 and 1400 times the size of your Sun, can attract even small solar systems if they are within reach of their gravitational fields. Orbiting these stars there are planets much larger than 100 times the size of Earth, but most are in orbits away from the star to balance their gravity, and this makes most of them surrounded by thick gaseous atmospheres like your Neptune, Saturn and Jupiter. These huge planets have moons larger than Earth, and many of them are inhabited, and many of these moons also have their moons. When you can access a macro view of these systems in real time, you will see very beautiful and interesting formations for sure. Friends, let's continue our mission here. Rest assured that no matter how it seems, everything will be under control in one way or another.